Okay, we have about 56 people on this call this morning, so we're going to get started. All right. Good morning. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Jamie Pasquinelli, District Manager of ULI Pittsburgh. I'm so happy you could join us this morning. I hope you have your coffee or morning beverage of choice on hand for our amazing program today. I just wanted to shout out our event sponsors for supporting this amazing program. We have CEC, Civil and Environmental Consultants, Mascaro Construction, and Oakland Business Improvement District. Thank you so much. And as always, thank you to our annual sponsors. We could not do this without you, so thank you so much. Just some housekeeping. Please make sure you have your mics muted throughout the program to prevent any distractions. Also, we'll be engaging in 2 Q&As during this presentation. Please insert your question in the chat box at any time, or raise your hand and we will try to get you on camera to ask your question. Also, this program will be recorded and it will be sent out to all registrants. And now, without further ado, I will hand it over to Georgia Petropoulos, Executive Director of Oakland Business Improvement District and our WLI co-chair. Georgia?
Good morning. Thank you, Jamie. Good morning, everyone. I'm Georgia Petropoulos and newly minted co-chair of this amazing committee, the Urban Land Institute Women's Leadership Initiative, on behalf of my co-chair, Lisa Hart, and the rest of our committee. We welcome you on this Friday morning. It is quite an honor to be active with a group of amazing women who share in the mission of ULI, which is to shape the future of the built environment for transformative impact in communities worldwide. And having been working with them for over a couple years now, I haven't met a greater group of just amazing women who have taken the charge, who continue to bring programming such as what you're going to have today to the community and to all the professionals in the area. And we look forward to doing more for you. So we thank you so much for participating today. I also want to put a shout out to the committee reps who quickly helped put this amazing panel together. I'd like to thank Alyssa Kunzelman, Mary Guiney, Lynn DiLorenzo, Jamie, thank you, Jamie, and of course, our esteemed former chair, Dusty Kirk, who's also going to be the moderator today. I'm here to introduce our moderator to you today, and I have to tell you, it was pretty tough putting Dusty's career in 120 seconds. I'm going to try my best, but she's just such an amazing person with such an amazing history and a career that all of us should achieve as well. Dusty is a partner with Reed Smith. She concentrates her practice on all aspects of real estate development, acquisitions, and economic incentives, with an emphasis on real estate litigation, including real estate tax assessment appeals, land use and zoning appeals, and eminent domain proceedings. Her work in real estate development includes handling the acquisition, financing, and tax increment financing for commercial, retail, office, industrial, and institutional properties, and obtaining economic incentives for development projects. Her general real estate practice involves negotiating with local tax jurisdictions on, again, TIFs, transportation and highway occupancy permits, and business and neighborhood improvement districts. She also represents property owners in realty transfer tax, sales and use tax matters, prepares loan and learn workout documents for both lenders and developers, and she negotiates sales agreements. Now, on top of all of this, this woman can write. She has been a prolific writer. She's been involved in over 50 publications. She has done multiple speaking engagements, and she's very active with many professional associations and community affiliations, anywhere from the Allegheny County Bar Association, the Pennsylvania Bar Association, Chatham University's Pennsylvania Center for Women in Politics, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation of Western Pennsylvania, and the Southwestern Pennsylvania Community Development Network, amongst many others on her resume. Dusty Kirk, welcome and thank you for everything you do. And we're looking forward to having you moderate this great panel today.
Oh, thank you, Georgia. As you can hear, I am having a little bit of a cold issue, losing my voice. So I am going, this is the beauty of one of the benefits of being on Zoom is I didn't have to travel anywhere to do this today. And I am really delighted to be able to be here because this is an amazing program, as Georgia said, that our group put together. And by the way, Georgia, I was an English major, so that writing thing just came naturally to me. So the panel that we've put together is about the institutional master plans. And it's an interesting confluence of time here because so many of our institutions have been doing their master plans in the last couple years. And what the hospitals have, and as you're going to hear, our educational institutions have as well. So we have today a group of speakers that I think will really enlighten you and explain what they're doing in our environment that is so important for our city and for the students that they serve. So I'm just going to, before I introduce our speakers, I'm going to just tell you what the purpose of the IMP is. And you can find it in 922.12 in the city zoning code. And the purpose of it is to provide a framework for development of large institutions, such as hospitals and colleges. And the reasons that the city has done this is so that they could be flexibility for the institutions, because things are always changing when you're at a college, university, or hospital. And also, they know that these big institutions are doing things, changing all the time, and they're doing it in very tight surroundings adjacent to residential neighborhoods, and they have an impact on those communities. So they want them to be flexible, they want to look at best practices, and they want the university to understand the potential for growth and the impact on the environment and how they can influence the sustainability. So I know those are big charges, and when the universities have to look at things over a 10-year period, it requires somewhat, a forward thinking and ability to say, okay, we may need to change things in the future. And so all these people you're going to hear from now are those kind of people who are dedicated to thinking big and, and also thinking about what's best for the community. So we have with us from Chatham, Walt Fowler, and Walt Fowler is the Senior Vice President for Finance and Administration at Chatham University. And Kate Tunney is with him also. She's the Principal Director of Urban Design and Communication at Rothschild Doigneau Collaborative. We have Owen Cooks with us, Assistant Vice Chancellor, Planning, Design, and Real Estate at the University of Pittsburgh. And we were to have Rod Dobish from Duquesne with us, who had to deal with a family issue, but we are delighted to have Terry Leisure, who works with him so closely, Project Manager of Facilities Management at Duquesne. And we have someone who, if you've done any work in the city, you probably know, and that's Bob Reppy, Director of Design, Campus Design and Facility Development, excuse me, at Carnegie Mellon. I'm going to turn this over to Walt and Kate now, because I'm losing my voice.
Okay. Wow, sorry, Dusty. That doesn't sound good. Anyway, Kate, okay, great. Share the PowerPoint. Okay, again, I'm Walt Fowler. I'm the Vice President of Finance and Admin at Chatham. And Chatham's kind of a smaller animal in Pittsburgh, but and so the IMP responsibilities fall kind of on me here at Chatham. And so as we were thinking about the IMP here at Chatham, we thought what are we really trying to do here? The main mission is what you see up on your screen here. In order to sustain another 150 years of growth, innovation, and impact, Chatham has created a vision for our campus and built environment that will enhance the lives of our community members. And I just want to, on this slide, just say community with a small c, because we sometimes tend to think about only the Chatham community, but what we try to do is think about the neighborhood communities too, and not only the immediate neighborhood communities, but kind of more globally. Next slide. We tried to look at our Chatham strategic plan for guidance, and that was a little clumsy because the strategic plan we had here at Chatham was getting a little old. In fact, we're in the process of doing a new one right now. But the main elements here that we're trying to address in this strategic plan are enhance academic excellence and student experience, expand Chatham's leadership in sustainability and health, improve access and affordability through innovation, deepen partnerships for student and alumni success, and build student capacity and capabilities. And I would add to this is, just because someone has to implement this practically, what that boiled down to in a practical sense was we were trying to gear ourselves for modest growth of our students. And so we were trying to gear for going to about 1,400 undergrads and about 1,200 graduate students. So that's very modest growth. And the next thing is we also wanted to make sure this plan was mostly inward facing, because we're in a very unique neighborhood here in Shadyside, Squirrel Hill. And so it is a really inward facing master plan, except for our Fifth Avenue face, which we want to improve. And Kate will talk about that a little bit more. These are all old buildings here. Many of them are historic buildings. And so the plan we wanted to have is a paced upgrade of facilities. There's a big sustainability focus in our plan, not only in the systems, the building systems, but also in the site with respect to our arboretum, and also kind of our responsibility within the neighborhoods for stormwater control, which is a big problem here in Shadyside. And finally, one thing we had to attend to is that our Shadyside campus, where we are submitting the IMPs relates to, is we have two other campuses effectively. One is in our East Side building in East Liberty, and also our Eden Hall campus out in Richland Township. So we wanted to be attentive to make sure we harmonized the Shadyside IMP with what we were trying to do at the other campuses. Next slide. Before I turn it over to Kate, I just wanted to really kind of give people kind of a sense of the context. We have a very unique campus here. It's really not an urban campus at all, but it's in a very urban area, and it's also in a very upscale area. So the campus here, this is the map, but just to orient you, where the sides of this campus are bordered by Fifth Avenue, by Shady Avenue, by Murray Hill Avenue, and generally by Wilkins Avenue. But what makes it even more unique is we exist in a private enclave called Woodland Road. And so Woodland Road, West Woodland, East Woodland Road all travel through our campus. And so the direct neighbors that we've had to deal with here are really the Shadyside community, the Squirrel Hill community, those who live directly on Murray Hill, Shady, and Fifth. And since Dusty lives on Woodland Road, and as she well knows, most directly, we we have to keep the people from Woodland Road and the Woodland Road Association happy. So, so anyway, that kind of gives you a context of where we're at. But I think that the takeaway from this slide is, you know, kind of unlike Pitt, unlike Duquesne, we're not really in an urban area. We're in a very residential area. So there's some special sensitivities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kate, and she's going to run through the high points of just the built systems.
Great, thanks, Walt. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the campus, you know, as Walt was orienting you to this slide, you can see that the campus is really a park-like pastoral setting right in the midst of the neighborhood. And as Walt had mentioned, with the additional campus locations at Eden Hall and at Eastside, and the spreading out of some of their programs across those campus locations, it really allowed this institutional master plan to focus on how we activate the Shadyside campus and kind of bring back that density of students, faculty, and the programming. And the campus here is about 37 acres. As we're doing the institutional master plan, we had divided the campus into different character districts. And today we're going to focus on talking about two of those districts, one along Fifth Avenue and the other what we call the academic quad district. So a key component of the master plan was building upon the existing campus assets. As a whole, the site has 37 buildings and around 770,000 square feet of space. The institutional master plan, as Walt mentioned, has modest growth projected around 10% in enrollment over the next 10 years. So the institutional master plan focuses a lot on renovations and some strategic building additions that adds about 100,000 square feet of space and around 300 dormitory beds, all without expanding the campus footprint. There were 5 themes that the projects here in this master plan support. And those are the campus character, expanding the range of academic spaces, enhancing student experience, campus living, and sustainability. So as we go to the Fifth Avenue district, and just to orient you, this is Fifth Avenue. The focus here was bringing the Chatham character of the landscape and the pedestrian scaled infrastructure to this really highly visible and very active roadway. To accomplish this, the plan is to relocate parking lots that were sitting against Fifth Avenue to be behind the buildings. And that gives space for a widened sidewalk and landscaping along Fifth Avenue. There will also be new pedestrian walkways and passage to connect these buildings across, which is shown with these orange arrows, to allow the students to go across from building to building, but then also strengthening that connection up the hill to the academic quad district. So in this side here, you can see the existing conditions on the left and the rendering on the right. It gives you a sense of the character of those improvements with the widened sidewalk and bringing the landscaping and adding that secondary path system elevated above the street for students. There's a very active bus stop here, so this will allow a more gracious space for folks to wait. The primary entrance to the campus is on Fifth Avenue, and there's a building there called the Thompson House, which will kind of anchor that corner and be transformed into office space and reception space, really bringing some activity to that corner. Those are the 2 main points within that Fifth Avenue district. As we move to the academic quad district, it's really a hub of activity. Their building of Braunfall Coolidge sits at the center of this campus and really has a density of the classrooms and offices. Right now, it's a barrier between the 2 quad spaces. The goal is to increase transparency along the ground floor of the buildings in this district and add more student-centered spaces and lounges to make that activity visible. So a couple of the projects in that area are expanding the Buell Science Building on either end to create additional lab space. Here you can see a view of what is planned. The addition to Dilworth Hall to really double the dormitory beds And this space is the main quad, so it can really reinforce and activate the main quad space as well. One of the upcoming projects will be the renovations to their Anderson Dining Hall, which will really enhance the student experience. And then in addition, the athletic fitness building right here, there's a need to expand that just based on the student growth and the growing athlete population there. So creating an addition to that facility to help support that additional growth. And here, this is the Braun Falk College building, focused on really how do you activate that first floor and create some transparency through and across. As Walt was mentioning, the Chatham Arboretum plays a large role in adding the character to the campus. They have a tree canopy coverage of about 50% of the campus area. And the projects here were located to limit the disturbance of the Arboretum. And we've also identified areas where additional trees can be located if there is any disturbance. And then, I know Walt mentioned the university's focus on sustainability, and each project in this master plan is really an opportunity for the university to advance its commitment to sustainability, including their goal to achieve carbon neutrality by 2025 and 100% renewable energy by 2030. Some of the main strategies we're focused on in this institutional master plan are really the maintenance and stewardship of the existing structures, making building envelope improvements as renovations are pursued, sub-metering buildings as they are renovated to better track individual performance, and continuing some efforts in installing solar thermal panels at dormitories. And that was a quick summary there, just to give you some highlights and overviews of some of the projects planned.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Walt. I really appreciate that. I know how thoughtful Chatham has been personally, because as Walt says, I live on Woodland Road, right in the middle of their campus. So it doesn't mean that they still haven't had challenges. And we are going to get to some of those after we go through Pitt, which is going to be a contrast to this sort of enclave where Chatham is, and Pitt, which is in a really tight urban area. Before I started coughing so badly, there were a couple things I wanted to direct your attention to regarding the IMP. So the City Planning Department has issued something that they call their best practices. And so you can pick that up, and it's really helpful, I think, for all the institutions and anybody working with them as to what they really want in the institutional master plan. But from just hearing from what Chatham did, the three things that they're really specifically focused on is protect the integrity of adjacent residential neighborhoods by addressing the impacts of institutional development, provide a growing and continuing source of employment which is easily accessible. And I think that's a challenge for all of our institutions just because of the dense environment that they're in, and create attractive and efficient urban areas which incorporate a high degree of amenity. And then the last thing, and you heard from Kate, protect sensitive portions of the natural man-made environment. So those are the things that they're really telling us to focus on. And I'm going to turn it over to Pitt now.
Great. Thanks, Dusty. Appreciate it. So I'm going to go through Pitt's master plan, and I really appreciate being invited to this group. Enjoy talking about our master plan. This presentation was particularly challenging because I have 10 minutes, and the old adage, 10 minutes, a minute a slide. Most of the master plan presentations I've done recently have been 100 slides or more. So I really had a challenge with 22 10-year development sites and 14 25-year development sites, how I would pick and choose what content to share. So what I've done is a little bit of a cut and paste job of some of the different things that we've sort of learned through the master plan process. We are at sort of the tail end of it right now. In fact, we're going before City Council on Wednesday next week for what we hope will be our final master plan presentation. That presentation will be a little bit longer than this one. So what I've boiled it down to is what I call the IMP top 10, right? Features, components, must-haves, that sort of thing. So number 10, the plan must bring value, and how a plan brings value is what the institution does in terms of bringing value. So these are some statistics that we measure on a regular basis as to the value that we bring to the community, from companies to economic impact, jobs, and including some of the things that we do for schools and others. So it's always important that our plan help us bring this value to the community, to the region, to the Commonwealth, and to the world. Number 9, plan must chart a course, but also be flexible. So one of the biggest challenges we have with all of those different sites we have is some of our plans were pretty well known what might go where. Others are sort of placeholders that give us that flexibility as priorities emerge. And so we've used in our plan a lot of illustrative diagrams that try and predict what might be in terms of a building envelope, but in the end, it ends up being very different. This happens to be an addition to our medical school that was envisioned to have a lot more components to it, but in the end ended up being this corner addition and some renovations in the middle. Number 8, plan is more than a collection of buildings. It's about placemaking. In the formation of the IMP, sometimes it's easy to get lost down that rabbit hole, and you're focused on very particular setback of a building of a particular street. But at the end of the day, we have to lift all of those plans up to more of a placemaking sort of criteria. So enhancing our environment, promoting open spaces that can be enjoyed by the surrounding community, use of materials and details, and all of that will flesh out in individual projects, but you sort of have to have that base weave behind the document to be successful in placemaking. Number 7, plan seeks to understand history. So this manifests itself in a couple of different ways. Obviously, this plan built on master plans previous to it, projects that were successfully built, other projects that were not. But we also, particularly to our campus, have quite a diverse architectural heritage that we have to respect. We also are in a couple of different historic districts, which can create some challenges, but also unique opportunities to respond to that history for the best solution. Number 6, a good plan must respect your environment. And so there are 4 elements that kind of rose to our attention, and a lot of it related to the best practices document that we followed as a part of our development process that we want to track our performance. And that is in how we deal with open space, tree canopy, stormwater, and parking. And so as we develop projects in our master plan, we're going to be tracking the impact to these 4 elements in particular, as to the expansion of open space, the replacement and expansion of tree canopy, how we effectively deal with stormwater and parking, which is an ever-present push-pull need. We typically find ourselves on the balance beam of half the folks want us to put more and more parking in, the other half would just as soon get rid of cars in Oakland. And so we chose a path in the middle of that narrow beam of where we're looking at a net change of 0. And we'll see what happens the next 10 years as to ride sharing and other services and how that might impact. Number 5, a plan must respect context. So in our campus, particularly on our hillside, which we've started to redevelop, and there are some projects that we hope to get approved in our IMP next week that would manifest themselves on that hillside. We do have different contexts on our campus. We're generally a pretty urban campus, but we do have some areas on campus that we want to highlight that could be more rusticated or even further. And so we kind of built this vocabulary around the hillside, but it applies to different areas of campus, that we have a continuum of environments that we want to ensure that our built environment respects that different context. Number 4, can't we all just get around? So I could have put in many maps and parking diagrams and bicycle locations and how we get around campus. As I said, it's can be a divisive issue. We have to get people to and from our campus, and to do that, we have to travel through communities, and that can be a lot of stress points. So how we get around sensitively but effectively is all a part of the plan as well. The impacts that potentially new structures have on traffic and flow are all things that had to be analyzed with a pretty keen engineering eye to ensure that we could mitigate the impacts of that sort of development. Number 3, a plan must be sustainable. And Dusty and the folks at Chatham both commented on this. Obviously, it could start with green buildings and water management. We have several goals here as well in terms of reducing greenhouse gases, expanding composting, reducing landfill waste, expanding into renewable energy. We're excited about a hydroelectric facility that we're putting on the river that hopefully we'll get 25% of our electricity from when that goes online. So all these worthy goals that we have in terms of number 3. Number 2, your neighborhood is an environment too. And so we looked at 3 goals here. One is to alleviate our impact on the neighborhood. So you can see this as negative impact, right? So a lot of students in a closed space, trash and noise and other things that can impact our neighbors. But we also have the opportunity to enhance our neighborhood. So these are all the positive things that Pitt brings to the table and how that might enhance the neighborhood we live in. And then improving community access to Pitt programs and facility resources. So the stair-step diagram, we seek out those community priorities and feedback. We link that to our foundational strategies and then carry that forward into a neighborhood enhancement plan. And the number 1 thing, lesson learned, I guess, gosh, let's just do this every 10 years because this is a lot of work. This has been a 2-year journey for Pitt, culminating in Wednesday's meeting next week. And you know, obviously there's an amendment process as things change. Hopefully we've balanced the right amount of flexibility with some plans that we can carry out. So those are just a few of the lessons that we've learned here at Pitt in carrying out our master plan.
Well, thank you, Owen, and thank you, Walt and Kate. I know both of you have to take off, so we're going to ask some questions that I had prepared and then open it up to the audience to see if they're ready to ask more questions. So I think, Owen, you just said that you worked on this for 2 years, but can you tell everybody how long you had to present before Planning Commission before you actually got through the process?
Yeah, so, you know, we had obviously a number of community input meetings where we were forming our plan and testing ideas and getting feedback and things. And then formal presentations started with the Planning Commission. Our final document is like 600 pages. And so that's a lot of material to condense into PowerPoints and things, which we have done. We ended up doing 4 briefings with the Planning Commission. And we sort of divided the content along different lines, took questions and feedback at each briefing, came back to the next briefing with some additional answers and so on. And then we had the final hearing after those 4 briefings, which queued us up for the city council process, which we started a couple of months ago, and hopefully will end successfully next week. So those Planning Commission meetings, they meet every 2 weeks. So, you know, that by itself was a couple months of just straight meetings in that 2-year process.
How many experts did you have to help you prepare this plan? I think that would be instructive to learn.
Sure. Our primary architectural firm that we employed in our master plan was Air St. Gross. And then we included a number of experts related to the different disciplines. So we had transportation management plan by VHB. We had both CEC and Gateway engineers involved in stormwater and other civil engineering aspects of that plan, and several other experts in different areas. In addition, we had sort of planned some projects, and so there were already some architects engaged on particular buildings that helped us flesh out the different building envelopes and things that we had to respond to.
And I really liked your slide where you showed all the traffic. And, you know, as I read at the beginning, you know, city planning wants you to create jobs and have them easily accessible. And I think where you're located, you know, that you talked about the traffic and how people get around. Was that one of your biggest challenges in this master plan, or what would you?
Yeah, it really was, because you know, some of these developments are infill sites that are not currently buildings, and so you're necessarily adding some density to certain areas. As I said, the parking debate is an age-old debate about you can never have enough versus other things. But from an environmental and stewardship standpoint, we do see the lessening of parking on campus as necessary. And here at hopefully the tail end of COVID, we've learned some lessons about our ability to remote work. And so we're looking at a campus, at least from a staffing perspective, in certain positions might not be as dense as it was before. And so ride sharing and shared parking programs and those sorts of things are all things we're looking at today to help alleviate that congestion. Our traffic analysis was kind of a bright spot in our study, and a little bit of a surprise that as we tested intersections and how they perform today versus a full build out after 10 years, almost all the intersections still worked. Now, people have different opinions of how well they work today, but I can tell you we didn't make them any worse at the end of 10 years.
So, Owen, I'm going to go back to you a little bit on that remote work, but I'd like to get Walt and Kate's take on what their biggest challenges were, which I think were a little bit different than yours.
Yeah, well, like Owen said, this has been a 2-year odyssey for us as we've talked to all our neighbors and neighborhood groups. And you know, I think there's actually, listening to Owen and his presentation, there's a lot of parallels, like parking. One of the things we talked a lot about was, you know, what do you do with parking? Does it go up? Does it go down? So we decided it stays the same. And that's what's in the master plan. So we'll see how that works with a little modest growth. But, you know, I think one of the biggest challenges we had is the fact that we're in a residential area. And so, you know, I think we had a very constructive process. You know, Dusty may disagree, but with Woodland Road Association, I think we got through that pretty cordially and happily. But there, you know, there is one campus face that's not so much. And then I think part of the problem is we had a couple construction projects that were historical that people really continue to not litigate, but argue about, you know. So one was 20 years ago and one literally was 50 years ago. And so, we're trying to weed our way through those. I think those were the, you know, the biggest kind of discrete challenges we had. You know, I think from a traffic standpoint, we didn't talk very much about the traffic study, but that we had done. But, you know, like Owen said, I was really surprised that, you know, our traffic interfaces on the local streets actually were pretty good, and there weren't very many problems that our growth was going to cause. And then the last thing, just kind of to try to be a little parallel to what Owen said, you know, we use a fair number of consultants, but not certainly as many as Pitt. But Rothschild Doino was the architect. We use CEC as kind of the civil engineer. Trans Associates was our traffic engineering firm.
So Walt, I think you were very thoughtful with the Woodland Road Association, and it's different because we're on a private road. And so I think that was a lot of different challenges than being in the heart of Oakland. And everyone felt that, the traffic on a private road is something that needed to be controlled. And we thought you did a good job with that. Now, I can't speak to all of the neighbors on Murray Hill, and they're fighting about 20, 50 years. I can't speak to that, but some of the comments that I'm seeing in the chat, and I want to, get to those. And then I had a couple other questions for you both. So people were asking, is this a living document? And I think, Owen, you did respond that the master plans are intended to be living documents. And I think, Walt, that too, because things change, even how universities change over 10 years and how education changes. So do you know what the process is that you would go through, and maybe if you decided that this living document needed to change? Either one of you can explain that.
Well, I'll start. I mean, there's an amendment process, for the master plan. So that's kind of the procedural way forward. But I think the way, just practically what happens here is that as you go forward, you try to put placeholders with respect to space, with respect to sizing, those kind of things. And I think, then when you actually do the project, then they get distilled into actual construction plans, which then everyone gets a shot at also. So I think there's kind of an inherent way that these things morph as you go forward. So I guess that's my reaction to that question.
Yeah, similar here, there is an amendment process. It involves the same rigor of public process and involvement and engagement as you do for the regular plan. So, it's something that you would have to engage in very thoughtfully. But our last plan, we did a couple amendments, and what typically arises is perhaps there's a new opportunity that we didn't quite design the site for in the original plan, or it's a use that wasn't contemplated at that time. And so, we bring that forward through the same process and rigor of development as the original plan. And I suspect, as flexible as we can be, things might change over 10 years. It would bring an amendment about.
I could just also add that city planning has been a big part of helping to usher the institutional master plans through, and there's been a lot of back and forth, and they've been very helpful. So I'd anticipate as changes and amendments would continue, they will continue to be a great resource.
I think they're also sort of a unifying resource. I know one of the chat question was about how institutions work together. So in addition to just the collegial way we work across lines on a number of issues, particularly where our borders touch, so us and UPMC or us and CMU, the city also can sort of be a sounding board for those things in terms of ensuring that we're not sort of competing with ourselves on those plans. Another resource that the city has, I know there was a question about traffic and parking analysis, and are we looking within our own little bubble? We actually go to the city to find out what other plans are doing so that we can include those traffic counts to the extent those other plans have been developed and those impacts are known, so that it's not just within a bubble of considering what those impacts may be. I think one of the more challenging aspects of that is those temporary impacts when the construction happens. So, on Forbes Avenue, we close one side of the street and the developer is trying to close another, and that's where DOMI very specifically needs to get involved and try and get those things worked out.
So that brings up two things for me. And one is and don't mind my voice, I'm sorry, I'm losing it. But one is that the hospitals, and they're doing their master plan, and they have traffic. And I think you said that that background traffic is included. And can you tell us what the process is that you go through regarding the specific traffic? And then I have a little question for Kate too. So go right ahead, Owen.
So our traffic engineer performs analysis, in the field surveys and other instruments to assess the impact. And they go by the proposed uses and sizes of facilities and how that contributes to that impact. Obviously, if the facility is proposed to have any parking, that's folded into it as well. One of the things we did in our master plan is included many more options for parking than we would need to maintain our net zero, knowing that a facility might move forward and might not. So those counts of parking might go up and down over the course of the 10 years. And so all of those impacts are taken into account. And then again, we sort of have that more holistic survey view of what the other impacts are from neighboring properties, at least on the public side. Obviously, we can't know what a private developer might be in the market for of land adjacent to campus, that sort of thing. But to the extent that it's known, and we rely on our partners at the city to understand what those impacts are.
So, Owen, there's a question about SCAFE in the chat and future needs for it.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, in the limited time I had, I didn't want to just pick on, say, 5 of the 22 sites. So I can just tell you generally, we believe residence halls are something we're going to have and have proposed in our master plan. We think we do a better job than the private market, housing our students and feeding our students and providing that complete residential experience. And we intend to continue that and grow that program, not just from a sheer growth standpoint. We've predicted, moderate growth overall at the university, but we want to capture more of that off-campus market and retain our freshmen longer in our residence programs. We do have a few academic facilities within the plan. Some are more known than others. So we know generally arts and sciences, our largest school, typically has expansion needs, and we've reserved some spaces for them. We have a school of computing information sciences that needs a home. They're currently distributed across different buildings on campus. Our athletic department has some expansion needs and some new facilities that they are planning. So all of those are components in our master plan, in addition to School of Medicine and some of other professional schools that potentially have projects, or at least they have building sites for potential projects to help that development.
So I think Kate and Walt, you showed some white boxes as expansion. And I think that's the flexibility that's built in to the IMP, because once it's in there for 10 years, you can come in and say, yes, this is what we're building, but you still have to design it. And then you go back to city planning and go back to the community. And I think that's an area that's often confused as the fact that you still have community input. So I wanted you to talk about that a little bit and how that evolves and what you do as an institution once you say, okay, here's this big box. Now what do we do with it?
Well, I think we're dealing with that in a couple ways right now. But with respect to explaining it to neighbors and to the community, it's really a big deal, because where the conversation immediately goes in a public meeting or in a neighborhood meeting is to details that we really don't know, because it's 10 years down, it's 5 years down the road. So, you know, we try to explain that you're going to get another crack at this in a development plan. So, you know, but we're just trying to outline where that fits. You know, however, inevitably, to keep everyone happy, you know, you end up making certain commitments within the IMP to deal with the development plan in certain ways, and so I think that's the reality of it. You know, you put the block in the master plan, and with some kind of broad commitments to satisfy neighbors. And then the rubber really hits the road when you get into the design phase for the building, and then you know, you get you know, construction plan and things that are really important to the neighbors that you have to deal with at that point.
I think that's the most challenging part of the master plan, is not tying the future architect's hands, right, on a building site as you've defined it, but respecting the fact that you are given an opportunity that most of the rest of the city isn't, and that is writing your own zoning code for the next 10 years. And so it's that very difficult balance of the flexibility of sort of writing your own code, but needing to be as specific and enforceable as any other zoning code. So I got to have setbacks, and I got to have sidewalk widths, and I got to have all these elements. And I'm doing that sometimes in the vacuum or absence of an architect for a particular building. And I might not even know the building's use. It might be residence / office / you know, these multiple things for that flexibility. So that is the more challenging aspect of trying to balance those forces.
I think when you're trying to design something for something you haven't designed yet, it gets to be challenging. But I would say perhaps at the scale at which we were operating at Chatham, unlike Owen, where you were, we had a little bit better of a sense of what some of those buildings were going to become, or some of those spaces. And in our process, we were, you know, intentionally trying to capitalize on existing circulation and elevators in buildings. So we were thinking probably a little bit more at the architectural level as well, as we were developing those footprints, because we wanted to make sure that the square footages and the heights, you know, could accommodate the kinds of uses that the university was looking for.
So I think there's one question in the chat that is directly to you, Owen, although I'm not sure. And then there's another one about transportation demand strategies that I'd like to see if we can hold till after the next speaker. But Owen, do you see the question about
real estate?
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously the regulations for the IMP are for the EMI zoning district. So the acquisition of real estate outside of the EMI is not a part of the IMP submission, but obviously it's a part of our thinking and strategy for campus development and solving all those campus needs. The project that comes to mind as a good example of where Pitt's thinking goes in this direction is our facility at Baum and Center. So we took the old Ford manufacturing plant there, did a rehabilitation of that, and are looking at another addition. We did that with a development partner as a P3. The amount of space, just that would have been a heavy lift for us to put, say, in the middle of our campus in the EMI district. There was also a lot of synergy with UPMC's campus in that area. And so those are the types of factors that go into a decision about whether we're going to employ a solution within our IMP to solve a particular need, or look off campus or adjacent to campus, but maybe not in the EMI zone to be able to solve a particular need.
With respect to Chatham, I think it's an important point that I probably didn't make clearly enough, is that we have two other campuses. We have a large office building in East Liberty at the corner of 5th and Washington Boulevard, or Penn and Washington Boulevard. And then we have a 388-acre campus out in Richland Township, one of the things that really is a big advantage, was a big advantage in our IMP, is that those two campuses really depressurize kind of the Shadyside campus quite a bit, because a lot of our, a fair amount of our growth has occurred and will continue to grow in those two campuses, and not on the Shadyside campus, where we're really kind of constricted and limited.
So I want to have you all join me in thanking Owen and Walt. They both have a hard stop, and Kate as well. So I want to thank them for being here and taking the time with us. It's been so informative. And thank you again. And we'll spotlight Terry Leisure next for Duquesne.
Thanks, Dusty. I'm going to try and hang on for a couple more minutes, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dusty. We'll see you.
Hi, Terry. Are you ready to go? We're ready to have you. I think this.
Hi, everybody. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, hi. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. I'm filling in for our Associate VP and Chief Facilities Officer, Rod Dobish. He couldn't be here. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Katrina Barnett, who is another project manager, and she is actually the project manager for our next major project from our IMP, and that's the College of Osteopathic Medicine. So I wanted to make sure that she was here to answer any questions if there was anything regarding that.
Hello.
So just a quick reference, this is a map of Duquesne University. We're situated in the middle of city of Pittsburgh CBD to the west, and then the Hill District in Oakland to the east, kind of sandwiched in between the Boulevard and Mercy Hospital, really, Bluff Street and Forbes Avenue. So we have 47 buildings on our campus, about 50 acres. We have 9 schools of study with a 10th one coming. Numbers that we have for our employees were from the fall of 2019, but you can see we have an enrollment of about 48, and that's down from our biggest enrollment was over 10,000. So facing some challenges with that. We have approximately 3,779 student housing capacity, 6 men's varsity and 11 women's varsity. So our IMP development and process has been like Pitt's and Chatham's a multi-year process. It started in approximately 2018, but our previous IMP had expired, and that was done by WTW Architects. But we knew that we were going to be getting a new administration, and in 2016, Ken Gormley became our 13th president, and we also got a new provost. In 2017, Duquesne adopted its new strategic plan, and that is what we started to base our new IMP on. So we started with WTW to draft the new updated master plan. And right after they submitted the first draft to us, the Department of City Planning came up with the IMP Best Practices Guide. So that kind of stepped us back a little bit, because that Best Practices Guide is a good overview, an organization tool for us to write the master plan. So with that said, we also got some gateway engineers, Up Studio Landscaping, and Trans Associates as additional experts to help us write the master plan. We also had a series of performance targets meetings with city planning, and that was 3 meetings that we had that really helped to keep us on track and understand what they were looking for and the changes that we needed to make in the master plan. So after we had our 3rd and final meeting with city planning, the pandemic hit. And I don't need to really go into how that affected, the universities, because we all face similar issues with that. But after that, on April 1st, we did submit our final draft of our IMP. In April, we had our planning commission briefing. They had wanted to see some further clarification on what we had presented. And on June 1st, we had the planning commission hearing, and it was approved with the condition that we continue to work with the staff to reduce the massing or the footprint of our mixed use residence life building on Forbes Avenue, which I'll go over. So we are meeting next week with the 3rd-party developer for that to kind of go over how we can meet that requirement for the commissioners and move forward with the bringing this to the the city for approval. During our process, we also had extensive public engagement with our external stakeholders and community partners. The university also met internally with faculty and staff for their input. So it was a really good process to get everybody's opinions. I can say that some of the projects that we had initially actually changed based on the input that we got from the community and from the faculty and staff. One being our open space on campus and not wanting to develop that area. So it was a really good process to go through. We're also aligning a lot of our master plan with the Uptown Eco Innovation District. So a lot of the goals that we have listed in our IMP align with that. This is just a map of our 10-year development plan. There are 11 proposed development projects in our IMP, which compared to Pitt's, I know is a lot less. So the first one we had was the UPMC Cooper Field House, formerly the AJ Palumbo Center. And that was actually needed to be part of our IMP, but it was completed in February of 2021. And the highlights of this are we have 6 owner suites, 55 club level seats, 4 unique corners with good sight lines. We have high def video boards and ribbon boards and a really 10,000 square foot training center for the students with a sports performance lab and nutrition center. So that was completed. We had a couple games in there, and we're looking forward to continuing having normalcy, I guess you can say, for the upcoming year. The second one is our College of Osteopathic Medicine, and that is on the corner of Forbes and McGee, where the old Life's Work building was. We bought the university purchased the Life's Work building, and it is currently being demoed to build this new college. It's an 80,000 square foot building that will have advanced technologies, state-of-the-art stimulation. It's planned to open in the fall of 2024, and the construction is going to start in the spring of 2022. The next one is on the opposite corner of the college, and this is our mixed-use academic building. And these are just renderings to show for placeholders. This mixed-use academic building would be a facility for classrooms, labs, offices, auxiliary uses. It will have a setback in its plaza on the corner that will mirror what we have at the College of Osteopathic Medicine to make a more welcoming corridor in that area and activate that space. The next 4 projects are athletic projects, and they will be all externally fundraised. So the next one is the visitors locker room. And that is just, it's a locker room for the visitor sports teams with a viewing deck on top. Right now, our visiting teams have to get ready in our pool locker room. So that'll be a nice addition to the athletics in the Rooney Field. And then we have the new press box that will replace our existing outdated press box. We have a new perimeter wall on the north side of the Rooney Field that will have seating and some gates to get in and out of. And you can't really see it, but over by our towers, Living Learning Center would be a little area for athletics offices, a little bump out that would house some athletics offices. Number 8 would be an alumni house that would be next to, in between our Trinity Hall and our admin building. It hasn't been designed yet, but it would be a house actually that would, for event space and visiting alumni. Number 9 is our BRT station at the corner of Forbes and McAnulty, and we agreed that we would add this BRT station on our campus. We're currently working with the Port Authority to brand that station with Duquesne architectural elements and colors and call it actually the Duquesne station. The number 10 is our mixed use residence life building. You can see the rendering right here. It's sandwiched in between our power center, recreation center, and this mixed use academic building that will complete that Forbes Avenue corridor there. And this will be built by a third party P3 arrangement, and we'll have apartment style suites for students and for about 550 beds. And lastly, we have our Forbes Avenue Gateway Park that will be on the corner of Forbes and Boyd. We will be raising our Mendel Hall and adding this parklet to have more open space, to be more of a gateway when you're to the university, when you're coming up Forbes Avenue. And it will have trees and public art and stormwater management and area of respite for the public, and signage for Duquesne University. Like Walt had said when he was for Chatham, the Forbes and Fifth corridors seem to be the main focus of everybody, that, you know, the city, the neighboring residents and everybody. So this is just, again, a slide showing an overview of the projects that we have on our Forbes Avenue and the Forbes Avenue development with the public neighborhood realm. Part of the IMP was we had a zoning change in there. We're asking for this little section where highlighted in green, which is currently where the Life's Work building was, that was zoned UPRA, and we asked for that to be zoned EMI. So that was part of the IMP, to have that in there for us to have that zoning change. And then the next couple slides are just the recent renderings of our College of Osteopathic Medicine. This shows the south elevation, the east elevation, in the west elevation. And the next slide shows better the plaza that will be in the front of the building on Forbes Avenue, with tree plantings and benches and just an opening, welcoming spot for that corridor that this will be right across from the new UPMC Cooper Field House. And that is it.
Thank you, Terry. I think you all have a lot on your plate, and I think it's been a lot of work. And I see Owen is still on. I think there's a lot of BRT and transportation questions that come to mind, but I'm going to hold those for a minute. And also I want to ask, and I see someone's asking about the mixed use new student housing, but I want to hold those to make sure we get CMU, because I see they're on a building spree since I'm in there walking their neighborhood a lot. So Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Dusty. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Mhm.
Excellent. And I want to just do a quick more. We are at a very different place from where my three comrades who had just presented are. We are kind of in the middle of our master planning process, whereas a lot of them are either like Owen and others are kind of wrapping theirs up. We are in the middle of ours, and I'll show you a diagram at the end kind of showing where we are with everything. But that's actually really, I think this is a good way to end, because it kind of shows what that process is. You can kind of see how the things are being cooked right now, all the pieces coming together rather than the final result. Just as a note, just to kind of do some fast facts for the university. Probably know a lot about us, but it's just some things that are interesting. You know, we have about 140 acres and about a little under 6 million square feet of gross square feet. The interesting fact is, you know, while we have about 19,000 FTE-ish type folks on campus between faculty, staff, and students, we, in the last 10 years, our university has flipped from being a primarily undergraduate university to being a majority graduate and PhD university. We have about 7,000 undergraduates, and now we have about 7,700 graduate and PhD students, which is an interesting dynamic because, you know, there's very different space demands that come with graduate students, with professional programs, with PhD students. And so that's one of the things that we've been really working with in the last year or so. We have a team that we put together. We're super excited to talk about, you know, UDA, our local homegrown master planning team, has been really leading us with our planning this team. We also have engaged GAI consultants who's doing our mobility we'll talk about, as well as Evolve, EA, who has been working with us on our sustainability component. So we're going to talk about it. This is really high level stuff right now. If you really want to learn about the details, we're just getting ready to start unleashing a lot of the details of the plan. So give me a call and we'll be happy to come talk to you, or we'll talk at a future session or such on that. Where we really started with things when we started doing our master planning was laying out the principles. What are the things that we as a university hold most dear for us that we want to make sure are embedded? Building off of the university's strategic plan, we came up with, and our Simon's principles, we came up with these dozen principles that focus on these kind of core themes: design, experience, mobility, context, and opportunity. And you've heard a lot of this stuff from my predecessors, my friends here have been presenting this morning, talking about all these ideas, talking about reinforcing, having a master plan that reinforces the connection of university design and its values, creating memorable spaces. That's a lot of things are about, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about this morning is improving the campus experience. How do we make the campus experience something that is memorable so that our students, while they're here, are having the best experience possible? Mobility is a big one, obviously. We've heard a lot about that. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, this idea of context, you know, especially Carnegie Mellon. We had been, for the first 100 years of our 120 years, had been a more insular looking university, more cloistered. And in the last 20 years, as Dusty noted, we have been in a bit of building spree. We've also really had our kind of coming out as wanting to be one of the major economic engines with our friends that are all presenting today of Western Pennsylvania. And what does this mean for our connections to the city, to Shenley Park, et cetera? So the first thing we've been doing in looking at it is really breaking the campus into kind of, and you've heard this a lot, Kate talked about this as well, breaking it into kind of distinct districts, places that we want, things are, some areas are very different at universities than others. So we have this idea of the historic core, which on our campuses actually works very well. It's more about kind of tweaking it, adding academic sites when it's appropriate to do so, when the need arises. We look at our North Campus, where our new business school just opened. And, for many years, all of us in Pittsburgh remembered as the big giant parking lot that was on Forbes Avenue, the Moorwood parking lot. And how do we rethink that? And how do we build upon the success of the new Tepper building to increase density? And that's a big item that we're looking at, is this idea of increasing density on campus to allow for our growth. And how do we integrate that North Campus with the historic core? When we look at Craig Street, the Craig Street area, this is an area that is very different. It's an urban district. It's a district that we are partners with many others in, including the businesses, lots of institutions, including the University of Pittsburgh. And these are areas that we want to work as creating this kind of dense urban district that really benefits from all of the things that are around it. And then Shenley Park is one. We'll talk a little bit more about Shenley Park in a few moments, because we think it's an asset that the university has kind of turned its back on for a long time, and it's one that we want to improve. So when we look at this, and we talk about where we're going to go, and I'm not going to, these are still very, very early ideas. So I could tune back in the next month or two as we start to talk about these. We've developed 20 different development sites. Some of these are on-campus sites, looking to try to build additional academic building as needs arise. Some of these you can see, the vast majority of them are kind of focused on the Forbes Avenue corridor, ranging from Craig Street at number 20 with 19 and 20 with our north and south of Forbes sites, all the way up to the Greek quad. The rethinking of our Greek residential quad at the corner of Forbes and Moorwood and increasing density there is one of the big things that we've been looking at, knowing that we could probably double the amount of student housing on the North Campus area, and to allow to do much like what Pitt's doing, to add to on-campus housing. One of our primary pushes, as you'll see, we actually have 2 residential halls under construction right now, is to add more on-campus beds. Campus, we want to actually add over the next 10 years. We want to add up to maybe we add about 20% more beds. We have 4,000 beds on campus right now. We want to add up to about 800 if possible. So those are big goals. When we talk about, so those are the development components. And like I said, we'll talk about more of those over the rest of the summer and into the fall as we move into our approval process. We really want to talk about mobility. This is one we've all talked a lot about. And we've taken the kind of we have the same kind of note, you'll note at the bottom, we have the same kind of intent for no net new parking on campus, which we think is, a lot of our other peers are doing the same thing. We want to engage in working with our partners. We already have started engaging on is there a way that we can share shuttles in Oakland, especially, and try to get in that microtransit. But our real focus, and this goes back to the campus experience as well, is working on how can we make the campus safer for pedestrians and bikes. And that's part of it. There was a big push in the last master plan about Forbes Avenue corridor and the Forbes Betterment Project, and the result of that with our hard work with our friends at the city of Pittsburgh and at PennDOT. They're really kind of creating this modal hierarchy of putting a preference on people who are walking and biking to campus, and then public transport. And then at the very bottom, kind of this idea of, sorry, if you're in a single occupancy vehicle, you're maybe not getting the preferential treatment, because let's face it, warehousing cars is expensive. And when we have limited resources and space in Oakland, those are things that we want to try. We can't just build our way out of issues, is one of the things we've learned. Part of that then also goes for this idea of building a mobility network. It's not just about getting people to campus, but it's getting people around and through campus. This idea of being part of the greater system. We think of that in regards to biking, the idea of the Forbes Avenue bike lanes that were implemented a few years ago, connecting to the greater bike system of the East End, but also adding connections so that you can get from Shady Side to Shenley Park, so that you can actually get from Oakland and Shady Side down to the river via the Neville Avenue and the Liza Furnace Trail. Working with, and this has been mentioned, I know that Terry just talked about it, engaging with the Port Authority on how, when bus rapid transit comes, this is a big deal, especially for us institutions, because we're all kind of arrayed along the BRT route. how can we make that BRT system really work for the universities and help start to mitigate a lot of the impacts that normally might happen with institutions by moving more towards transit. So then we talk about this idea of also looking on focusing on open space and pedestrian goals. And I'm not going to read through all these, you can kind of get the idea of them, but the idea of one of the things we've learned in the pandemic is that people will sit outside, even in Pittsburgh. You know, we all have this idea that Pittsburgh is gray and gross and too hot, too cold, too wet, but people will sit outside. And so one of the things we want to do is intentionalize that, create more outdoor seating, focus on the fact that we have a campus that does have has really impressive, important green spaces, and how can we make those green spaces usable? And then ultimately gets to this idea of connecting to Shenley Park. You know, one of the ideas is that you look at Shenley Park right now, it's kind of the edge on Fruit Street is kind of an overgrown parking lot. How can we improve that so that we can better integrate the park to the campus and ultimately to the rest of the East End and vice versa? Sustainability has obviously been a long-term goal for the university. We've taken, for over 20 years, we've required that all new construction be at least LEED silver. We're actually boosting that to require that all new construction over $5 million would be a minimum of LEED gold. As you can see on here, we're maintaining our commitment to the Pittsburgh 2030 district. We're also looking at a lot of other new ideas, kind of building on ideas and going further. How do we track our development so that when we go and do new projects, we can also recreate a dashboard that we give to the city that says, here's what else we've been up to. Here's all of our buildings that we've already got approval for and built and how they're performing. One of the things we're going to be embedding in our master plan is this notion of how are all the initiatives we're talking about tracking with the UN sustainable design and development goals, the SDGs. How do we incorporate stormwater management? We've seen this week, you know, it's funny when we talk to our comrades around the country about being dry or not enough water. It's like we get too much water too fast, and how do we manage that? In fact, we're looking at the ideas or opportunities for black water reuse on campus as well. I'm almost wrapped up. I know we're running out of time, but I want to make sure we leave some time for questions. One of the things that we're focusing on that we're going to be building on is a 5-point proposal for neighborhood enhancement, part of our neighborhood enhancement strategy. Looking at everything from how do we deal with our kind of immediate neighbors? How do we make connections? How do we build upon the Craig Street district? You know, working with Georgia, and I want to give a shout out to Georgia and her team. They've been really working hard with us on what the future of Craig Street might be, South Craig Street. It could be this great urban district. It just needs a little oomph to it, and Georgia's been really working hard with us. So thanks, Georgia, on that. Also talking about the amenities. You know, the university is an open campus. How do we make sure that everybody understands that these things are available to all? And then also talking about our economic input, you know, our impact. You know, as we talk about the hospitals and universities, that's what makes Pittsburgh. That's why it's driving the renaissance of Pittsburgh right now. And how do we continue to build on that? So where are we on our schedule? You can see by the little colored boxes, we have a lot that we've been doing. Everything from meeting with anybody that'll listen on campus and any neighbors that'll listen. We spent the spring, of course, as Owen noted and Terry noted, master planning is a 2-year process. We spent most of the pandemic with our team, thinking about ideas, testing ideas, looking at things, talking to our leadership about where we're going to go. And then over the spring, we've rolled out our introductory pieces. And now we are really at the precipice of rolling out these new concepts that we're going to be doing through the rest of the summer, with the idea of putting together the document in the early fall with our submissions and targeting. Our current master plan will expire in April of 2022. So we're targeting April of 2022 as our target date for that. And so just want to leave with kind of the illustrative plan that everybody likes, the colors and the soft, nice colors and all the pastels that make everybody excited. But it really is an exciting time for not just Carnegie Mellon, which is super exciting, but also for all the institutions. And I want to give a shout out to all my friends who have done earlier presentations. It's a lot of exciting things happening with the institutions in the city of Pittsburgh right now. So I'll wrap it up. I'm like 2 minutes over, Dusty, sorry.
No, Bob, you did great. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we have a lot of questions. I know I have quite a few questions for both you and Terry. There was one in the chat that I want to get answered, Terry, and it was about where is the mixed student housing?
The student housing would be located on Forbes Avenue between the Power Center and, so it's between Forbes and McAnally and Forbes and McGee Street. So it's right next to the Power Center, across from our parking garages.
Okay, great. So can you tell me then, I know you said there was a condition that was put on for you to work with, still with the neighborhood, is that it?
No, when we had our planning commission hearing on June 1st, they wanted to understand more what that Forbes Avenue corridor would look like. And even though, we don't, like you said, the trick is we don't have anything designed yet, but we're putting in placeholders. What the placeholders that we have are not to the maximum. However, they still wanted to understand better what that would look like. They want to make sure that Forbes Avenue doesn't look like a big box, that we have plazas and that we have setbacks and that we're not just building a big rectangle down Forbes Avenue. So we need to kind of come back to them now and show them a little bit more clearly what we're thinking. But it's kind of, like my colleague said too, it's like a little bit of a dance because you don't have it designed yet, and you don't want to limit yourself to anything that's going to not give you the maximum benefit. So.
Well, Terry, you're absolutely right. That's what the other people said too. It's like you have a big box, it's not designed, you have to come back when it's designed. But
Right.
That is the challenge of these. So
Right.
There's a question for you, Bob, in the chat about what other requirements are needed beyond housing. What are you trying to expand?
So I think the biggest push that we're seeing now, there's a twofold push. One is the notion for the hard sciences. University is, it's to be a great computer science university, to be a great engineering university, you need the hard sciences behind that. And so I think there'll be a push in the future, probably in the next 5-6 years, of moving towards how do we continue to grow our research and our education opportunities in the hard sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, and math especially. I think that's the first part. I think the second part, I didn't touch on this just because of time issues, but is this notion of what is going on with Hazelwood Green. I think where is the university's component role to play in Hazelwood Green? What is the Oakland's role as part of Hazelwood Green in the future development? And so I think that'll be another interesting one that we're going to see. I think the last part of the answer is also, as Owen noted and Terry noted, we need to be flexible. We don't know what the next big thing is. If you would ask, I like to tell this funny little story, like when we were doing our last master plan in 2012, if you had gone back 10 years before that and said, oh, we need to be ready for Google in the city of Pittsburgh that's going to have 400,000 square feet, everybody said, sorry, what's a Google? And how do you adapt? That 20 years, that is something like that has completely changed the dynamics of how things work. We don't know what those next things are. And so we want to be ready to be able to accommodate those things in a way that works within the master plan kind of parameters, but also sets up conditions that everybody's super comfortable about. And by the way, this is Frank. Frank is very needy.
Frank is very cute. So my question is, there was a lot of consternation when CMU went across Fifth Avenue.
And so that's been that was one that we wrestled with. You get to a point, Dusty, where distances that get too far make it hard to. One of the things that makes one of the things we think makes Carnegie Mellon special is the ability for the interdisciplinary connections that everybody has, and you need to be close to do that. And so we talked about, is Fifth Avenue too far? And in talking about it with the Shadyside neighborhood and talking about it with Central Catholic, we thought that the development of a kind of core of residential housing on Fifth Avenue really kind of benefited in a way to help, especially for our upper class students and maybe sophomore, junior, seniors that are getting ready to transition out into kind of living on their own. And the North Oakland, kind of the density of North Oakland, our little bit of Brooklyn, as I like to call it, that area is really kind of a good way to transition. And so we've also put limits on it. You'll notice on this that we are not proposing new developments along the Fifth Avenue corridor as part of this master plan. That was different from last master plan. I think we're kind of at the point we're saying we've done what we need to do on Fifth Avenue, and we're not proposing more at this point.
So I know we're at time, but I think Georgia might want to ask you a question about Craig Street. And then I want to just have a little closing and see if anyone else has any questions.
Well, thanks, Dusty. Bob, I mean, by the way, that was a great piece on, yes, absolutely, what's happening along the South Craig Street corridor. But if you wanted to add any more comment on, you know, CMU is a huge partner. CMU is a property owner, a stakeholder. We've got great projects, short and long term, that we're looking into. But is there anything you want to highlight from the perspective of CMU as the campus and why that commercial corridor is so important to your stakeholders and your constituents?
We think, well, to me, it's important because it's not just a kind of traditional college street. It is a street that it's a business district that, yes, it serves Carnegie Mellon and it serves the University of Pittsburgh, but it also serves visitors that are coming to the Carnegie museums especially on evenings and weekends. It serves the very dense area of North Oakland as well. And so that has this opportunity to be this great, super kind of urban mix, very cosmopolitan, if you will, urban mix that I think that everybody tended looking for as this place that's like, oh, you come to Oakland, you need to go to Craig Street. You know, on Craig Street, you can get to the Carnegie Museums, go see the International, or you can go to Carnegie Mellon, or you can go to Pitt. Both those things are there as part of that. And so I think it's not just necessarily about kind of bricks and mortar stuff. It's also about programming, which is where Georgia and her team have been so strong in helping us, is thinking about how do you activate it? You know, how do you make it so that it's a place that people want to be, that they're comfortable being? How do you make it so that there's events there? You know, kind of thinking of the lessons that have been learned in the Forbes and Fifth districts through Central Oakland and the really great strides that have been made there over the last 20 years. How can we take those lessons about programming, about, you know, look, mini golf, for example, closing down, you know, taking a parking space or two and adding more outdoor seating. All those kinds of things have huge benefit, they're kind of untested, maybe an unquantifiable benefits to the way that a place feels. And that's one of the things that we're really looking, and we're really excited about the kind of direction that Georgia and her team are helping us get to.
Thank you, Bob. I would like to make a reservation here to bring you all back, because we didn't get to talk about parking demand, transportation demand very much, remote work, how that's affecting how you use your property, and the osteopathic hospital and parking and all kinds of things, Terry. And hopefully I'll be able to talk a little better by then, get through this infection. And I think that everybody has been really, really great today. And I really want to thank you. And hopefully we'll come back for another half an hour. And I want to keep us sort of on time here. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jamie.
Thank you so much, Dusty. And thank you to our speakers today. Thank you for your time. It was such a great program. Just want to thank our event program sponsors again for supporting this amazing program. And never to forget our annual sponsors. We appreciate you so much. As a reminder, this program has been recorded, and I will send out the recording to all the folks that have registered. And please keep in mind that you could go to our website at pittsburgh.uli.org/events to check for events anytime. And we hope to see you again soon. Have a fantastic day, everybody.